deep in the heart of Texas.
We're in the business of winning.
Don't bet against me.
I don't bet anyway.
Lose your life.
I guess this would be our big game of the week here. Tennessee minus 3.5 versus the Aggies, but I read that wrong. I'm taking Aggies plus 3.5. So give me Aggies plus 3.5 at Tennessee. You know, the weather's going to be bad. At minimum, it's going to be super windy. It could also possibly be rainy. So give me the team that's better at running, right? Or at least give me the team that is ninth in rushing defense, the Aggies. Fifth in yards per carry allowed, Aggies. 54 tackles for loss, they lead the country. 26 sacks, also leads the country. And if Tennessee's going to throw it around, they're not the Tennessee of last year, right? This guy is not as good. Milton is not as good at throwing it. I mean, the Aggies do have the 24th best passing defense. They're probably very similar to you know, like Texas in the fact of they will hold people, but they are susceptible to the big plays sometimes.
Yeah.
But Tennessee hasn't been exploding like they were last year, right? They're not hitting consistent deep plays. And if it's windy and rainy, that takes that kind of factor out even more. So I'm going to take the Aggies plus 3.5 for one. And then with the weather, and both these defenses are pretty good, I'm also going to take the under 55.5.
Yeah. I like it. I like both of them. I agree with a lot of what you said. The weather and Aggies front seven, I kind of like that. If they can't throw the ball, which is A&M's A&M's biggest weakness is their secondary, as we saw last week, then yeah, you would think that's a huge advantage for A&M. Tennessee can run the ball, right? I mean, they are rushing for 231 yards a game. Granted, hasn't been against, I think, some of the defenses A&M has faced, but they can run the ball too, so that makes me a little wary. But I think A&M's front seven can handle anybody in terms of the run game and getting pressure. But like you just said, if the quarterback's able to buy time, if A&M does not get there, the Aggie secondary is really susceptible, and that's the worst thing. You saw it last week. They literally had a chance to put Bama away, and they get like two guys on Bama's QB, and he sneaks away and gets like a 15-yarder to his wide receiver. And that happened a few times. That kind of just broke the back of A&M. I thought A&M should have been up by 2 touchdowns at halftime against Bama last week. I thought they absolutely crushed them in the first half, even though the scoreboard didn't quite show it. Bama was struggling. They were lucky to get that one touchdown that they had. And man, I was really hoping A&M was going to put it together, and they blew it in the second half. Again, it went exactly like I said I would. It just if they don't get to Bama's QB and he's able to sneak out, A&M is in a lot of trouble. But I think here this is a kind of a get right spot for A&M. I just, man, you got to think. I mean, it's only 2 losses, right? Miami and Bama are not exactly, you know, it's not like that embarrassing seeing Miami's still been pretty good, minus Georgia Tech last week. But Bama's obviously who they are. I really felt like we should have won last week. I didn't feel like we deserved to win against Miami. That's just how bad we played on defense. But I really thought we made enough plays to beat Bama. The offense just didn't quite get us over the hump. But I think A&M gets right here. I'm probably going to put 2 on A&M, plus 3, plus 3.5. It'd be nice to get that hook. Maybe if the public fades A&M a little bit, which isn't impossible, might get that 3.5. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to stick with my boys. I'm going Aggies here, plus 3.
Damn, y'all really might have taught me how to pick at Tennessee. They had won 12 in a row at home. I think kind of the other way. I think that loss against Bama probably takes the wind out of the Aggie sails. It's like, fuck, man, like another year we're going to have to wait, you know. Like basically just you could hear your voice like, shit, like we just blew a whole another year. I wonder if the players are just thinking the same thing. I don't really think there's a scenario they reach the SEC title game.
Well, real quick, I don't mean to take your time, but I would say like if A&M was going to be like that Miami game I think was way more of a heartbreaker and a backbreaker and like bad for the morale than the Bama game, right? Like losing to Bama by 6 after you had them and you feel like you might outplay them for 2 or 3 quarters. I think that's different than just getting smacked by Miami, who's I don't think they're quite as good as A&M across the board talent wise. They just, again, our one weakness, they were able to exploit it over and over. I don't think it's. I honestly, after seeing how they came back after Miami, I don't think it's that demoralizing. I think this team. I think some attitude and culture has changed at A&M a little bit with this recruiting classes and the guys they got. I just feel like I don't feel like that's a problem. I think they still feel like they have something to play for. Again, Bama could lose another game. It's not impossible to think, right?
That is true. It's not the Bama Bowl this year.
Yeah, and if Aggies can get past this Tennessee team, their schedule's all downhill until LSU at the end of the year. So,
in Tennessee, really, like when they first played Florida early in the year, Florida just routed them. And but since then, I think they've won every game. The Aggies, I mean, just that loss. I mean, having your second loss, I think you're right. Either way, you're going to see what type of Aggies team this is going into Tennessee. And if they just come into Tennessee and knock them around and win, it says a lot more than like if Tennessee just beats them and it's another 3-loss and what get rid of Jimbo, all that crap's going to start happening. So I mean, but with that said, then listen to all what y'all said about the Aggies. I'm just going to put 1 on Tennessee, just for them being at home, and they've won 12 in a row at home. And I don't know, we're going to see what the Aggies are made of coming off that loss.
Yeah, that's fair. I also think that if A&M wins here, right, you kind of say, all right, that Miami loss was bad, second game of the year, right? You lost by 6 to Bama after, some people might have said like A&M probably could have, should have won that one maybe. A few plays here or there, and A&M probably wins by a touchdown or two. But I just think that if A&M is thinking if we can win this game decisively or at least by a touchdown or something, we might be ranked, right? We might get right back in there, and it makes the Bama loss not feel so bad, right? I mean, it's not like we lost by 21 to Bama, right? We lost by 6. We were in control, I felt like, for 2.5 quarters, 3 quarters for a little bit. And I think if they can beat Tennessee here, I think A&M feels like they can get right back on track. So this is definitely a big game for A&M. This is definitely a nut up or shut up time. And I will agree, if they lose this game, that fucking sucks. Like, still think they do good the rest of the year going forward because their schedule gets easier. But yeah, if they lose this game, man, that really is going to hurt. I think they have a bye week either next week or the week after. So it'd be good to get to that bye week without losing another one.
The Aggies have, they lost to Miami, right? A ranked team. And then I think Bama, I think personally, they're going to be in the top 10, probably like near like 7 or 8 when the year's over, because they're kind of back to the Bama of you have to play mistake-free on offense and you have to bring it on defense just to have a chance of beating them. And so a loss to Bama is not, it's not really a reflection of, the Aggies can't beat Tennessee. Tennessee has lost, like the only decent team they played is Florida, and they lost, and Florida's not even that good.
Florida killed them.
That's like Florida's best win.
It was 29-16. It probably felt like they crushed Tennessee, but
yeah, it did.
It was kind of a surprise because Florida
I played on Tennessee that game, so I remember watching it. It was ugly.
So I think the Aggies have these. I think this will be probably the 3rd best team the Aggies have played, and I think
far?
Tennessee's going to.
Oh yeah.
I think when they play them, I think Tennessee gets exposed here a little bit. I think the Aggies win, and kind of talking to that Bama point, looking at their schedule going forward, Arkansas win, Tennessee probably a win. I know what happened last year. LSU is probably their toughest matchup, but LSU's shown they can't stop anybody. We'll see how Kentucky rebounds to Chattanooga and Auburn. So unless LSU gets a win there, it's looking like they win the SEC West. So
yeah, I agree.
Game against Bama is not too bad.
A&M's in the back seat right now, for sure.
They need I think LSU to beat Bama, and then I don't think LSU has lost yet in SEC play, right? So they need someone to beat LSU. Oh, Aggies could beat LSU, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think we can beat LSU this year. Absolutely.
Well, y'all play them. I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Last game
in the West.
Last game or second to last game of the year. I can't quite remember.
Yeah,
what
so
did
the
you
Aggies
say?
still
You just said something a second ago that made me think of something. Oh, LSU. Are they? They're not undefeated, are they? They lost.
No, they
They
lost to
lost
Florida
to
State,
Utah.
and they lost to no, they
Was
lost
that
to
LSU?
Florida State. Then they lost the second game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Florida
Ole
State, not
Miss.
Utah.
They lost to Ole Miss, so
Ooh, wow. Oh yeah, that's right. They gave up 700 yards of offense.
yeah. I was about to say, like, didn't they just get out some big ass game where they lost? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, yeah. That's my 2 cents on the whole Aggie situation. It freaking. Like, the Miami game actually now retroactively feels worse than the Bama game right now, coming fresh off of it. Like, I guess, like, they say there's no moral victories, but I think last week proved as well to A&M, like, the talent gap between them and A&M, between Bama and A&M is closed too. Like, at least for this year, right? At least right now in this present snapshot time. I still stand by what I said. I think A&M had more talent than them almost all over the field except the secondary, and I think Bama's quarterback and wide receivers outplayed ours definitely last week. I mean, I feel like if we play that game again at Kyle Field, man, I think A&M comes away with the victory. I really do. I really thought they crushed Bama in the first half. It felt really good. I thought we should have been up by double-digit points at halftime, which kind of sucked. I felt like that was going to come back to hurt us, that we didn't get more points on Bama. But yeah, I mean, the Bama game, I actually felt okay after. Like, I felt like we hit Bama in the mouth a couple times, which we almost never do, right? I know we beat them sometimes, but like, it's usually a sort of crazy thing when we beat them, or like a lot of big plays happen. And I feel like just matching up toe to toe last week, like, we looked okay. Like, I think we looked okay against Bama all across the field than what we've looked in the past, right? Even sometimes when we beat them. So, there's no moral victories. I understand that, but I thought A&M looked okay last week. I thought, even though they lost, again, you beat Bama for a half. Like, they did beat Bama for a half. I don't think there's any question about that. That's okay. That's a little bit of a, we'll take that away and use it for next game, hopefully.
Yeah, Ryan he's always asking me, or he's kind of pointing out, like, I'm usually pretty high on Aggies, and it's just from following recruiting. I would say the top 10 recruiting classes, I am constantly higher on them in games, just because I know at least the usual suspects there in the top 10. You know that their talent, despite, like, if their playmaker is not playing, can get them through games. And Bama's always there, Aggies, Texas, Oklahoma, like, those guys are always going to be. I think if Bama played, despite what just happened, the spread's probably the same thing it was last week, right? -2 if they played again. I think Vegas is like, we had that right. It was a close game, at least from what you saw, right? It just came down to a couple, things late. It can kind of blow the score up.
Exactly what I said too. I was like, if Milroe gets away and makes a couple plays, that might be the difference. Like, they have got to get to him all game, and it's like they got to him for 2.5, 3 quarters. And then he made a couple plays and burned the secondary, and the wide receivers made some plays too, and that was it.
And he's not a Bryce Young where you can get to him with an arm. You have to drill that dude.
Yeah.
So you have to get a solid hit on him, which makes it even more frustrating because he can, like, start to move when he feels pressure and then just escape, arm tackles. The dude's huge. So.
Yeah, and speaking of recruiting, like, one thing they have is called this blue chip ratio. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but A&M's I think 3rd in the nation behind Georgia and Alabama. It's essentially how many 4 and 5 stars do you have, and A&M's like 3rd or 4th in the nation behind Bama and Georgia. And you have to understand, like, this is almost like a new story arc for A&M, going back to that #1 recruiting class, right? Like, A&M had never done that, and again, with the NIL, I know we've talked about it a lot, but I think the NIL helps A&M. They are going to spend up there with everybody every year. That's just the way it is, and you're hoping they keep getting these top classes. It will eventually hit. It has to. Like, there's even some crazy stat about the teams who get, like, a #1 recruiting class, like, 3 or 4 years later, they end up, like, going to the championship game, like, half the time or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a really crazy stat. Like, you have to start with recruiting. That is where college football starts. I think, in my opinion, that is 90% of it. The other 10% is X's and O's on the field. Like, you have to hit recruiting. You have to get this blue chip ratio up. And A&M's done that. And one thing I will say about last year to this year, A&M does look head and shoulders like, I don't want to say talent-wise better, but head and shoulders, they seem more cohesive, right? They seem like a better unit on offense and defense than what they were last year. And again, it's just a shame we can't get a quarterback to just, put that cherry on top and drive it home, right? But I think we're in the right direction. After that Miami game, I was really down. I was like, fuck, like we're going to suck again. But we came back. We bounced back strong. I know we beat Auburn and Arkansas like we should. Lost to Bama by 6. I know there's no moral victories, but we're okay. Like I still think we're heading in the right direction. It's just a little slower than I would like, but that's all right.
Looking at the blue chip ratio, then we can go on. So I found it. So it's Bama, 90% of their team is a blue chip.
Holy fuck! That's
State,
4 and 5 stars, right? Or is that 3 stars too?
Blue chip ratio for 2023. It's 4 and 5 stars.
Okay.
85% for Ohio State, 77 Georgia, 73 Aggie, 72 Clemson, 71 LSU, and then 70 and 70 are Texas and Oklahoma. And then Oregon at 67%, making me regret that Washington pick, but I'm going to stick with it.
Was that the top 8 teams?
That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, Oregon is 9, and Notre Dame is 10 at 65.
So 6 out of the top 8 recruiting colleges in the nation are going to be in the SEC next year?
1, 2, 3,
That's crazy,
4,
dude.
5, 6. Yeah, 6 out of the top 10, and then 7, 8 of the top 15.
That's pretty crazy, bro.
Yeah.